I am Mia Thompson, 29 years old, and I never thought my wedding day would become a battlefield between my father and sister. After planning my dream wedding for over a year, my sister Madison called me during family dinner to announce she had booked her birthday party for March 15th, the exact same day as my wedding. When I refused to reschedule, she laughed and said, "Weddings are flexible, right? Dad can walk you to your next one." Dad chose her party over walking me down the aisle. He had no idea what I was planning. If you're enjoying this story already, let me know where you're watching from and hit that subscribe button while I tell you what happened next. Standing in my empty classroom at Lincoln High School on this crisp February afternoon in Richmond, Virginia, I was carefully arranging the last of my lesson plans before heading home to Jake. The winter sun streamed through the tall windows, casting long shadows across the desks where I had spent the last 6 years teaching English to teenagers who reminded me daily why I loved this job. My phone buzzed with a text from Jake Martinez, my fiancé of 18 months. "Getting off shift early. Want to grab dinner and talk about the seating chart?" His messages always made me smile. Jake was a firefighter at Station 12, one of those genuinely good men who ran toward danger while others ran away. We had met at a community barbecue 2 years ago when he was volunteering with the Richmond Fire Department's safety program, and I was chaperoning my students from the drama club. The proposal had come last August during a weekend trip to Virginia Beach, the same location where we would be married in exactly 4 weeks. March 15th, 2025. I had been planning this wedding for over a year, working closely with Sarah Chen from Chen Celebrations to create what I hoped would be the perfect day. Sarah was a miracle worker, somehow managing to secure the oceanfront resort for our ceremony and reception, despite my teacher's budget. Walking to my car, I thought about the family dinner planned for tonight at my parents' house. The whole Thompson clan would be there. My father, Bob, 58 years old, and owner of Thompson & Sons Construction, a company my grandfather Joe had built from nothing back in 1987. My mother, Patty, worked as the secretary at Oakwood Elementary and had been the gentle mediator in our family for as long as I could remember. Then there was my younger sister Madison, 26 years old, and what people politely called an influencer. Madison had built a social media following of over 150,000 people who hung on her every post about fashion lifestyle and whatever trend happened to be popular that week. She lived in a trendy apartment in the Fan District and somehow managed to turn every family gathering into a photo opportunity for her Instagram stories. Not that I minded, really. I had long ago accepted my role as the responsible daughter, the one who chose a stable career and a reliable man, while Madison chased whatever sparkly opportunity caught her attention. The drive to my parents' house in the West End took me through neighborhoods I had known my entire life. Past the church where Jake and I would be married, past the elementary school where my mother had worked for 20 years, past the construction sites that bore the Thompson & Sons signs that had become as familiar as street markers in Richmond. My parents still lived in the same colonial-style house where Madison and I had grown up, complete with the backyard where Dad had taught us to throw a baseball and the kitchen where Mom had patiently helped us with homework. The driveway already held Madison's white BMW, a gift from our parents for her 25th birthday last year. Inside the house smelled like Mom's pot roast, and I could hear the familiar sounds of family dinner preparation. Dad was in his favorite recliner, watching the evening news still in his work clothes, with sawdust on his boots. Mom bustled between the kitchen and dining room, setting the table with the good china we only used for special occasions. Madison was perched on the kitchen counter, scrolling through her phone while describing her latest brand partnership with some skincare company. She looked effortlessly put together as always, her blonde hair perfectly styled, even for a casual family dinner. "Hey, Mia," she said without looking up from her screen. "How's the wedding planning going? Everything still on track for March 15th. "Everything's perfect," I replied, accepting Mom's hug and stealing a piece of dinner roll from the basket on the counter. Sarah has been amazing to work with. The flowers are ordered, the photographer is confirmed, and Jake's family is flying in from San Antonio next week. Dad looked up from his newspaper. "Hard to believe my little girl is getting married in a month. Seems like yesterday you were playing dress-up in your mother's wedding veil." I felt that warm glow that came from family approval, something I had always craved more than I cared to admit. Unlike Madison, who seemed to effortlessly command attention and praise, I had learned early that my achievements were measured differently in our family. Good grades were expected, teaching was noble but not particularly impressive, and choosing a stable life with a good man was exactly what daughters like me were supposed to do. During dinner, the conversation flowed easily between wedding details, Jake's promotion opportunities at the fire department, and Dad's latest construction projects. Mom asked about honeymoon plans, and I found myself relaxing into the familiar rhythm of family dinner, surrounded by the people who had shaped my entire life. Madison was unusually quiet, occasionally responding to comments, but spending most of the meal typing on her phone. This was normal behavior for her, managing her social media presence, even during family time, so none of us thought much of it. It was during dessert when Mom brought out her famous apple pie, and Dad was telling stories about Grandpa Joe's early days building the construction company that my phone rang. Madison's name appeared on the screen, which seemed odd since she was sitting directly across from me. "Why are you calling me?" I laughed, holding up my phone. "You're right here." Madison's expression was suddenly serious, her typical playful demeanor replaced by something I couldn't quite read. "Oh, I meant to call you earlier but forgot. I just wanted to give you a heads up about something." The dinner conversation continued around us, but I felt a strange chill of anticipation. Madison never forgot anything when it came to social plans or important announcements. Her entire career depended on timing and coordination. "I just booked the most amazing venue for my birthday party," she said, her voice carrying that excited tone she used when describing her latest adventures to her followers. "You know how I've been wanting to do something really special for my 26th? Well, I found this incredible rooftop space in Williamsburg that just opened up due to a cancellation." "That sounds wonderful," I said, though something in her tone made me uneasy. "When's the party?" Madison's pause lasted exactly 3 heartbeats too long. "March 15th. I know it's the same day as your wedding, but this venue literally never has openings, and Tyler has connections with some really big influencers who can only make it that weekend. I was thinking maybe you could reschedule?" Weddings are flexible, right? The apple pie suddenly tasted like cardboard in my mouth. The silence at the dinner table stretched like a rubber band about to snap. Mom's fork clinked against her plate, and Dad cleared his throat in that way he did when he sensed trouble brewing. Madison sat there with her phone still in her hand, looking at me with the same innocent expression she had perfected since childhood whenever she wanted something. "Reschedule my wedding," I repeated slowly, making sure I had heard correctly. "Madison, I sent out save the dates last August. People have booked flights, requested time off work. Jake's entire family is coming from Texas. I know, but this is really important for my career, Mia. Tyler says this could be huge for my brand. Some major influencers are finally available that weekend, and you know how hard it is to coordinate everyone's schedules." As I listened to her reasoning, my mind drifted back to the pattern that had defined our relationship since childhood. There was the time in high school when Madison crashed my Honda Civic into a tree during a party I wasn't even invited to. Instead of facing consequences, Dad bought her a brand new Jeep Cherokee while I spent my summer job money fixing my car. When I asked why Madison got rewarded for being irresponsible, Dad just shrugged and said, "Accidents happen." Then there was college. Madison wanted to study marketing at Virginia Commonwealth University, which cost nearly $40,000 a year. Dad paid every penny without question, even upgraded her meal plan and got her a credit card for emergencies. When I graduated high school with a 4.0 GPA and wanted to study education at Virginia Tech, suddenly money was tight. I worked 3 part-time jobs, applied for every scholarship I could find, and still graduated with student loans I was still paying off. The most recent incident happened just 6 months ago. Madison had lost a major brand partnership with a cosmetics company after posting some tone-deaf content about mental health that sparked outrage online. Instead of acknowledging that Madison had made a mistake, Dad blamed canceled culture and social media toxicity. He even offered to help her sue the company for breach of contract, though any lawyer would have told him Madison had clearly violated the terms of her agreement. Bob Patty said quietly, her voice cutting through my memories. "Mia has been planning this wedding for over a year. Dad shifted uncomfortably in his chair, already wearing the expression he got when he was about to choose Madison's side, but wanted to appear fair about it. Well, now let's not get all worked up. I'm sure we can figure something out that works for everyone. There's nothing to figure out, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. I'm not rescheduling my wedding, Madison. You'll have to pick a different date for your party. Madison's perfectly applied makeup couldn't hide the flash of anger that crossed her face. Are you serious right now? Do you have any idea how long I've been working on building relationships with these people? This isn't just a party, Mia. This is networking. This is my career. And this is my wedding, I replied. The most important day of my life. I'm not moving it so you can throw a birthday party. Dad set down his coffee mug with more force than necessary. Now hold on, Mia. Your sister has worked very hard to build her business. Maybe we should look at this practically. Weddings can be rescheduled more easily than business opportunities. I stared at him in disbelief. Are you actually suggesting I should change my wedding date so Madison doesn't have to change her party? I'm suggesting we consider all options, he said, his voice taking on that tone he used when he thought he was being reasonable. Madison's party could benefit the whole family. Her success reflects well on all of us. There it was again, the familiar sting of being the afterthought, the reliable daughter who could be counted on to bend and accommodate everyone else's needs. I thought about my Uncle Frank, Dad's younger brother, who had retired from the Navy after 30 years of service. Uncle Frank was the only family member who had ever treated Madison and me equally, who celebrated my achievements as enthusiastically as he acknowledged Madison's. He was also the only person who had ever called Dad out on his obvious favoritism. You know what I said standing up from the table? I need some air. I walked out to the back porch, the same porch where I had spent countless summer evenings reading books, while Madison practiced dance routines for her social media videos. The February night was cold enough to bite, but I needed the clarity that came with sharp air and silence. My phone buzzed with a text from Jake. How's dinner? Tell your family I said hi. Before I could respond, the porch door opened and Madison stepped out, wrapping one of Mom's cardigans around her shoulders. Mia. Look, I'm not trying to ruin your wedding, she said, her voice softer now. Can't we find a compromise? Maybe we could do a joint celebration or something? A joint celebration, Madison. It's my wedding day, not a networking event. She sighed, and for a moment I almost believed she was going to apologize and find another date. But then she pulled out her phone and showed me her Instagram account. Look at my engagement rate, she said, swiping through analytics that meant nothing to me. I'm finally breaking through to the next level. Tyler says if I can get these influencers to my party and create the right content, I could double my followers by summer. That's life-changing money, Mia, and my wedding isn't life-changing. It's just one day, she said, echoing Dad's words from earlier. You'll have anniversaries every year to celebrate. But this opportunity might never come again. I looked at my sister, really looked at her, and for the first time I saw her not as the golden child who could do no wrong, but as a 26-year-old woman who had never been told no, never had to consider anyone else's needs, never learned that the world didn't revolve around her wants. Madison, I said quietly, I'm not rescheduling my wedding. Find another date for your party. Her expression hardened again, and she turned to go back inside. Fine, she said over her shoulder. But don't expect Dad to choose your little ceremony over something that actually matters. The next morning brought an uneasy quiet to my small apartment near campus. Jake had left early for his shift, kissing me goodbye, and whispering that whatever was bothering me from dinner last night, we would figure it out together. I loved that about him. In Jake's world, problems had solutions, fires got put out, and people took care of each other. He had no experience with the particular brand of family dysfunction that I had grown up navigating. I was grading freshman essays about To Kill a Mockingbird when my phone rang. Dad's name appeared on the screen, and I felt my stomach tighten before I even answered. Morning, sweetheart, he said, his voice carrying that forced cheerfulness he used when he was about to ask me to do something I wouldn't want to do. I wanted to follow up on our conversation last night. Your mother and I have been talking, and we think maybe there's a way to work this out. Dad, I said, setting down my red pen. There's nothing to work out. My wedding is March 15th. It's been March 15th for over a year. Madison needs to pick a different date. Now, Mia, I understand you're frustrated, but let's think about this reasonably. Madison has already put deposits down. She's invited people and her boyfriend has made promises to some very important influencers. It would be a real embarrassment for her to have to back out now. She's had less than 24 hours to plan this party, I pointed out. I've been planning my wedding for 14 months. That's exactly my point, he said, and I could hear the sound of his truck door slamming in the background. Since you've had so much time to plan, you probably have more flexibility to make changes. Madison is working under a tight deadline. I closed my eyes and counted to 5, a technique I had learned for dealing with particularly challenging students. Dad, do you understand that changing a wedding date means losing deposits, rebooking vendors, changing invitations that have already been sent, asking guests to change their travel plans, and potentially losing the venue entirely? I'm sure Sarah, your wedding planner, deals with this kind of thing all the time. These people are professionals. They understand that sometimes life requires adjustments. Before I could respond, I heard another voice in the background. It was Madison, and she was crying. Daddy, she's being so mean to me. Madison's voice carried clearly through the phone. I've worked so hard for this opportunity, and she's trying to ruin it just because she's jealous of my success. All she has to do is pick a different date, but she won't even consider it. Madison's there with you, I asked. She came by the office this morning very upset about last night, Dad explained. Mia, I think you need to understand how much this means to your sister. This isn't just a party. This could change her whole career trajectory. I felt something cold and sharp settle in my chest, and my wedding doesn't matter. Of course it matters, sweetheart, but be practical. You're going to be married to Jake for the rest of your life, God willing. You'll have 50 or 60 anniversaries to celebrate. But Madison might never get another chance like this. In the background, I could hear Madison sniffling dramatically the same sound she had made as a child whenever she wanted to get her way. She's saying I'm jealous of her success, I said, my voice flat. Well, aren't you a little bit? Dad asked, and the question hit me like a physical blow. Madison has built something remarkable with her social media business. She's young and ambitious and making her own way in the world. It would be natural for you to feel a little envious. I sat there in stunned silence, holding the phone and listening to my father suggest that my unwillingness to move my wedding was rooted in sibling jealousy rather than basic common sense. Dad, I said finally, I need you to listen to me very carefully. I am not jealous of Madison. I am not rescheduling my wedding. March 15th is my wedding day. You can choose to be there or not, but the date is not changing. Mia, don't be dramatic. I'm not being dramatic. I'm stating a fact. You have a choice to make. You can walk me down the aisle at my wedding, or you can go to Madison's party. But you can't do both. The silence stretched between us, filled with the weight of 30 years of family dynamics. In that silence, I could hear Madison's voice again, more urgent now, though I couldn't make out the words. You're really going to make me choose between my daughters? Dad asked finally. I'm not making you choose anything, I replied. I'm just clarifying what the choice is. Madison scheduled her party on my wedding day, knowing it would create this conflict. She's the one who created this situation, not me. I heard him sigh, the deep exhale of a man who was about to disappoint one of his children and had already decided which one it would be. Mia, I think you're being unreasonable. Madison needs our support right now. This is a crucial moment in her career, and she needs her family behind her. Your wedding is just a ceremony. The marriage is what matters, and that's going to happen regardless of what date it happens on. The words hit me like ice water. Just a ceremony. The day I had dreamed about since I was a little girl, the day I had spent over a year planning, the day that represented the beginning of my life with the man I loved, reduced to just a ceremony. I see, I said quietly. So you're choosing Madison's party over walking me down the aisle? I'm choosing to support the daughter who needs me most right now, he said, his voice defensive. Madison is at a crossroads in her career. You're a stable, successful woman with a good man who loves you. You don't need me the way she does. I hung up the phone without saying goodbye. For 3 days, I didn't call anyone in my family. I threw myself into lesson planning and wedding details, speaking to Sarah Chen about final head counts and confirming details with our photographer. Jake noticed my distraction but didn't push, understanding somehow that I needed space to process whatever family drama was unfolding. On Thursday evening, as I was sitting in our living room reviewing seating charts, my phone rang again. Madison's name appeared on the screen, and for a moment I considered letting it go to voicemail, but curiosity won out. Mia Madison's voice was softer than usual, almost tentative. I was hoping we could talk. "I'm listening." "Look, I know things got a little heated the other night, and I feel terrible about that. I never wanted this to become a big family fight. I was hoping maybe we could find a way to work this out sister to sister." Despite everything, I felt a small flicker of hope. Maybe Madison had realized how unreasonable her request was. Maybe she had found another date for her party. Maybe my little sister was finally going to choose family over social media followers. "I'm glad you called," I said. "Have you found another venue for a different weekend?" "Well, that's the thing," she said, and I could hear the shift in her tone. "I really can't change the date, Mia, but I was thinking maybe we could do something creative. What if we combined our events somehow? Like you could have your ceremony in the afternoon, and then everyone could come to my party in the evening. It would be like a double celebration." I blinked, certain I had misheard. "Madison, it's my wedding day, not a pre-party for your birthday. I'm just trying to find a compromise," she said, her voice taking on that whiny quality she used whenever someone wasn't immediately agreeing with her ideas. "I mean, think about it practically. Your ceremony is only going to last like 30 minutes, right? And then you'll have your little reception. My party doesn't start until 9 p.m. There's plenty of time for both." "My little reception," I repeated slowly. "You know what I mean. I'm not trying to minimize your wedding, Mia. I'm just saying that with good time management, we could make both events work." I felt something shift inside my chest, a door slamming shut on whatever hope I had been harboring for a reasonable conversation. "Madison," I said carefully, "do you understand that my wedding day is the most important day of my life? Do you understand that I've been dreaming about this day since I was a little girl? That walking down the aisle with Dad is something I've looked forward to for 30 years? There was a pause, and when Madison spoke again, her voice had changed completely. The tentative, conciliatory tone was gone, replaced by something I had rarely heard from her before: genuine irritation. "Oh my God, Mia, seriously. You're crying over a walk Dad can walk you down the aisle at your next wedding." The words hit me like a slap. My next wedding. "What I mean is," she continued, apparently realizing how that sounded, "it's just such a small thing to get upset about. I mean, it's literally a 30-second walk. And let's be honest, if your wedding was actually important, like genuinely significant people would prioritize it over other events." I sat there holding the phone, feeling like Madison had reached through the line and punched me in the stomach. She wasn't finished. "I hate to say it, Mia, but maybe this is really about you being jealous that I've built something impressive with my life while you're just a high school teacher marrying some guy who runs into burning buildings for a living. Maybe if you had achieved something worth celebrating, people would be more excited about your little ceremony." The silence that followed was deafening. I could hear Madison breathing on the other end of the line, probably realizing she had gone too far, but too proud to take it back. "You know what, Madison?" I said, my voice steady, despite the tears I could feel building. "You just showed me exactly who you are, and you've helped me make a very important decision. What's that supposed to mean?" "It means I'm done. I'm done being the understanding sister who always bends to accommodate you. I'm done being the daughter who never causes problems while you get everything handed to you. And I'm especially done pretending that we're a loving family when clearly we're not." "Mia, don't be so dramatic. I didn't mean it the way it sounded." "Yes, you did, and that's fine. At least now I know exactly where I stand." "Enjoy your party, Madison. I hope all those influencers show up and make your career dreams come true. Because after what you just said to me, you're going to need them. You won't have a sister anymore." I hung up and immediately took a screenshot of Madison's contact information before blocking her number. For the first time in my life, I wasn't going to swallow the hurt and pretend everything was fine. Madison had finally pushed me too far, and she was about to learn that there were consequences for cruelty even when it came from family. Especially when it came from family. The morning after Madison's cruel phone call, I woke up with a clarity I hadn't felt in years. The hurt was still there, sharp and fresh, but underneath it was something else entirely: determination. For the first time in my life, I wasn't going to be the understanding daughter who absorbed everyone else's selfishness and cruelty. Madison had shown me exactly who she was, and now I was going to show her exactly who I could be. My first call was to Uncle Frank. At 68 years old, Dad's younger brother had always been the moral compass of our family, the one person who had never played favorites or made excuses for bad behavior. He lived in a small house near the James River, about 20 minutes from my apartment in a neighborhood filled with other retired military families. "Uncle Frank," I said when he answered on the second ring, "I need to talk to you about something important. Can I come over?" "Of course, sweetheart. I'll put on some coffee." Uncle Frank's house was exactly what you would expect from a career Navy man, neat, organized, and filled with memorabilia from his 30 years of service. Photos of aircraft carriers and submarine crews lined the hallways, and his dress blue uniform hung in a place of honor in his living room, perfectly pressed and ready for the occasional military funeral or ceremony. When I finished telling him everything that had happened over the past week, Uncle Frank sat back in his recliner and shook his head slowly. "I've watched this pattern my whole life, Mia," he said, his voice heavy with disappointment. "Your father has been making excuses for Madison since she was old enough to walk, and your mother has been enabling it by staying silent. I've tried to talk to Bob about it more times than I can count, but he just gets defensive." Uncle Frank leaned forward, his blue eyes intense. "Let me ask you something, sweetheart. What would make you feel supported right now? What would show you that you have family who actually values you?" I thought about it for a moment, feeling the weight of 30 years of being the accommodating daughter. "I want someone to walk me down the aisle who's proud to be there, someone who chose to be there." Uncle Frank smiled, the first genuine smile I had seen in days. "Then it would be my honor to walk you down that aisle, Mia. I'll even wear my dress blues if you want. Turn it into a proper military ceremony." Tears filled my eyes for the first time since this whole nightmare began, but these were different tears. These were tears of relief and gratitude. "There's something else," I said, pulling out my phone. "I've been documenting everything. Screenshots of Madison's texts, detailed notes from my conversations with Dad. I want people to see the pattern, not just this one incident." "Smart girl," Uncle Frank said, approvingly. "Your grandfather always said that facts are more powerful than emotions. Speaking of Grandpa Joe, have you talked to him about this?" "Not yet, but I should. You absolutely should. Your grandfather has been watching this family dynamic play out for decades, and I think he's got some things to say about it." From Uncle Frank's house, I drove directly to Grandpa Joe's assisted living facility in the Fan District. At 84 years old, my grandfather was still sharp as a tack, though his body had been slowed by arthritis and the accumulated wear of a lifetime in construction. He lived in a comfortable apartment at Riverside Manor, surrounded by photos of the family and mementos from the company he had built with his own hands. "Mia, what a wonderful surprise," he said when I knocked on his door. Come in, come in. I was just having some tea and watching the news." I settled into the comfortable chair across from his favorite spot by the window and told him everything. Grandpa Joe listened without interruption, occasionally nodding or making small sounds of disapproval. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment, staring out at the James River. "I built Thompson & Sons to be a family legacy," he said finally, "something that would teach my children and grandchildren about hard work, integrity, and taking care of each other. Your father learned the hard work part, but somewhere along the way, he forgot about integrity." Grandpa Joe turned to look at me directly. "I've been watching Madison get away with murder for years, while you've worked twice as hard for half the recognition. It's not right, and it's not what I intended when I started this company." He reached over and patted my hand. "I've been thinking about revising my will anyway, sweetheart. Maybe it's time your father learned that actions have consequences, and maybe it's time the family business went to someone who actually understands what family means." The implications of what he was saying sent a chill through me. Grandpa Joe wasn't just talking about emotional support. He was talking about changing the entire future of the family business. After leaving Grandpa Joe's apartment, I spent the rest of the afternoon reaching out to Jake's family in San Antonio. His sister Carol was a registered nurse who had always treated me like the daughter she never had. When I called her and explained the situation, her response was immediate and fierce. "Mia, honey, you listen to me," Carol said, her Texas accent thick with indignation. "Jake's father and I have been looking forward to this wedding for months. We consider you family already, and if your daddy can't see what a treasure he's got in you, then that's his loss. We'll make sure you feel supported and loved on your wedding day." She paused, and I could hear her husband Tony in the background asking what was wrong. "Tell you what," she continued. "Tony was just saying he wishes he could do more for the wedding. How about he gives Jake that father-son talk that your dad should be giving, and I'll coordinate with your wedding planner about anything else you need. We've got your back, sweetheart." By evening, I had assembled what Uncle Frank jokingly called my coalition. Jake came home to find me sitting at our kitchen table with notebook pages spread out everywhere documenting not just the current crisis, but years of family patterns. "Babe," he said, settling into the chair next to me, "I can see the wheels turning. What's the plan?" I looked at this good, honest man who had chosen to love me and build a life with me, and I felt stronger than I had in years. "The plan is simple," I said. "I'm not changing my wedding date, I'm not accommodating Madison's selfishness anymore, and I'm not pretending that this family treats me fairly. Uncle Frank is going to walk me down the aisle in his dress blues. Your family is going to fill in the gaps where mine is failing, and everyone is going to see exactly what kind of people choose a party over a wedding." Jake reached over and squeezed my hand. "I'm proud of you for standing up for yourself. It's about time." As if on cue, my phone buzzed with a text from my friend Rebecca, who taught math at Lincoln High. "Girl, I just saw Madison's Instagram story about her party planning. Please tell me you're not actually rescheduling your wedding for that self-centered brat." I showed the text to Jake, who raised his eyebrows. "Madison's already posting about the party?" he asked. I pulled up Instagram and felt my stomach drop. Madison had posted a series of stories about her venue, her party planning, and most importantly, a poll asking her followers to weigh in on family loyalty and supporting each other's dreams. The post was carefully worded to make her sound like the victim without directly mentioning the wedding conflict, but anyone who knew our family would understand exactly what she was talking about. "She's trying to control the narrative," I said, screenshotting everything. "She wants to look like the reasonable one while making me look selfish." Jake studied the posts for a moment, then looked back at me. "So what are you going to do about it?" "I'm going to take the high road," I said, opening my own Instagram account. "But I'm also going to tell my story. People deserve to know the truth." The next morning, Madison's social media campaign was in full swing. She had posted a carefully crafted Instagram story showing her at the gym captioned, "When you're working hard for your goals while others create drama." Another post showed her shopping for party decorations with the text, "Some people can't handle other people's success, but I'm blessed to have a family who supports my dreams." But the post that really got to me was a selfie of her looking thoughtful and vulnerable, with a caption that read, "Praying for family healing during difficult times. Please send positive thoughts for my family as we navigate some challenges. Love always wins in the end." The comments were exactly what she had intended. Her followers were rallying around her, offering support and praising her maturity in handling family drama. Several people even commented that they were excited about her party and couldn't wait to see the content. What Madison didn't know was that my friend Rebecca had screenshot everything and sent it to our teacher group chat. Within an hour, half the faculty at Lincoln High School knew exactly what was happening, and they were not impressed with Madison's manipulation tactics. "Mia, my department head." Mrs. Patterson pulled me aside during lunch. "I hope you're not letting that little social media princess dictate your wedding plans. Some of us have been watching her antics for years, and it's about time someone stood up to her." The support from my colleagues was overwhelming. These were people who dealt with teenage drama every day and could spot manipulation from a mile away. Several teachers offered to help with last-minute wedding preparations, and our principal, Dr. Roberts, even mentioned that he would be honored to attend if I needed extra guests to fill seats left empty by family members. But the real test came when I decided to post something of my own. I had been crafting the post carefully for hours, running it past Jake and Uncle Frank to make sure the tone was right. I didn't want to sound bitter or defensive, but I also wanted to tell my side of the story. The photo I chose was from the previous weekend, when Jake and I had gone cake tasting with his sister Carol, who had flown in early to help with wedding preparations. It was a picture of the three of us laughing at the bakery, genuine joy and excitement radiating from our faces. The caption read, "Feeling so grateful for family who show up when it matters most." Planning a wedding has taught me so much about who truly supports your happiness and who just expects you to accommodate theirs. 4 weeks until I marry my best friend, surrounded by people who choose love over ego. I posted it without tagging anyone in my family, but the message was clear to anyone who had been following the drama. Within minutes, comments started pouring in from friends, colleagues, and even some of Jake's firefighter buddies who had heard about the situation. The contrast between the two approaches was stark. Madison's posts were dramatic and attention-seeking, designed to generate sympathy and engagement. Mine was straightforward and positive, focused on gratitude rather than conflict. But the subtext was unmistakable, and people noticed. My phone rang about an hour after I posted. It was Mom, and her voice was strained. "Mia, I saw your Instagram post," she said without preamble. "People are starting to ask questions about the wedding and whether there are family problems. Mrs. Henderson next door mentioned she saw something about conflict on social media. I felt a familiar tug of guilt, the same feeling I had experienced countless times growing up whenever my actions caused any kind of family disruption. But this time, I pushed through it." "Mom," I said calmly, "I posted a picture of myself with Jake's family being excited about my wedding. If that's causing problems, maybe the problem isn't my social media posts. But people are talking, Mia. You know how this community is. Word gets around fast." "You're right," I agreed. "Word does get around fast. And people are going to notice when the bride's father doesn't walk her down the aisle because he chose to go to a birthday party instead." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. "Sweetheart," she said finally, her voice smaller than usual, "I think maybe your father is starting to realize he made a mistake. He's been asking questions about wedding details and looking at the calendar. I think he's hoping there might be a way to do both events." "Too late," I said, surprising myself with how definitive I sounded. "He made his choice, Mom. He chose Madison's party over walking me down the aisle. Uncle Frank is walking me down the aisle now, and I couldn't be happier about it." "Uncle Frank?" she asked, clearly shocked. "Uncle Frank understands what family means," I replied. "He's honored to walk me down the aisle, and I'm honored to have him do it." After I hung up with Mom, I felt Jake's arms wrap around me from behind. He had been listening to the conversation while making coffee, and I could tell by his expression that he was proud of how I had handled it. "Your mom's trying to guilt you into backing down," he observed. "She's trying to keep the peace, like always," I replied. "But I'm done being the one who has to sacrifice my happiness to keep everyone else comfortable." That evening, Jake's firefighter buddies came over for what they jokingly called a bachelor party strategy session. Instead of the typical night out, they wanted to discuss how they could support the wedding given the family drama. Mike, Jake's captain and best man, was particularly invested in the situation. "Listen, Mia," he said, leaning forward with the intensity he usually reserved for emergency calls. "We take care of our own in the fire service. Jake is our brother, which makes you our sister. If you need us to form an honor guard, provide security, or just fill up the church so it doesn't look empty, we're there." The idea of a firefighter honor guard was both touching and slightly intimidating, but their unwavering support meant everything to me. "We've all dealt with family drama," added Tony, one of the younger firefighters. "But what is your sister and father doing? That's not a family drama. That's just selfishness. And selfishness has consequences." As the evening wound down and Jake's friends headed home, I realized that my coalition was growing stronger, while Madison's support system was built on manipulation and lies. She had her social media followers, but I had people who actually knew me, who had seen my character over years of genuine relationship. The difference was about to become very obvious to everyone. The confrontation I had been dreading finally came on Sunday evening. I was at home grading papers when someone knocked on my apartment door with the specific rhythm that meant family business. When I looked through the peephole, I saw Mom standing there alone holding a casserole dish and looking nervous. "Hi, Mom," I said, opening the door. "What brings you by? I brought you some of that chicken and rice you like," she said, holding up the dish. and I thought maybe we could talk about everything that's been happening. I accepted the casserole and invited her in, though I suspected this wasn't a casual visit. Mom had that look she got when she was preparing to deliver a message from Dad, the same expression she had worn when she used to explain why I couldn't have something Madison had gotten easily. We settled at my kitchen table, and Mom looked around the apartment Jake and I shared. It was small but comfortable, filled with books and photos from our travels together, evidence of a life built on mutual respect and genuine partnership. "You have a nice life here," she said, and there was something wistful in her voice. "Jake seems like a good man." "He is," I replied. "He treats me like an equal partner. He supports my dreams and expects me to support his. We make decisions together." Mom nodded, and I could see her processing the implied contrast with her own marriage. "Mia," she said finally, "I need to be honest with you about something. I've been watching this family dynamic play out for 30 years, and I've been too scared to speak up. Your father has always favored Madison, and I've let it happen because I thought keeping the peace was more important than fighting battles I couldn't win. The admission hung between us like a bridge neither of us was sure we should cross. I know I failed you," she continued, tears starting to form in her eyes. "I should have protected you more. I should have demanded that your father treat you fairly. But I was raised to believe that wives don't challenge their husbands and mothers don't cause family conflict." "Mom," I said gently, "what changed? Why are you telling me this now?" "Because I finally realized that keeping the peace isn't the same thing as having peace," she replied. "This family has been broken for a long time, and pretending everything is fine hasn't fixed anything. It's just taught Madison that she can do whatever she wants without consequences, and it's taught you that your needs don't matter." I reached across the table and took her hand. "It's not too late to change things, Mom. Your father asked me to come here tonight," she admitted. "He wanted me to convince you to reconsider the wedding date, or at least to let him attend both events somehow. He's starting to panic about the social implications of missing your wedding." "The social implications," I repeated flatly. "People are talking, Mia." "Mrs. Henderson asked me directly why Bob wasn't walking you down the aisle. Pastor Williams mentioned that he was surprised to see Uncle Frank listed as the escort in the wedding program. Your father's realizing that this is going to be very public and he's not going to come out looking good." "And what did you tell him?" "I told him he should have thought about that before he chose Madison's party over your wedding," Mom said, her voice stronger than I had heard it in years. "I told him that you're a grown woman who has been patient and understanding your entire life, and if he can't see what a gift that is, then he doesn't deserve to walk you down the aisle." I stared at my mother in amazement. In 30 years, I had never heard her directly challenge Dad's decisions or speak so clearly about the family dynamics we had all been dancing around. What did he say to that? He got angry like he always does when someone calls him out on his favoritism. But then Madison started crying and saying that I was ganging up on her, and your father's attention went right back to comforting her. It was like watching the same play performed for the 1,000th time. Mom squeezed my hand. "I'm not asking you to forgive your father or change your plans. I'm asking if you can forgive me for not standing up for you sooner. Because I want to be at your wedding, Mia. I want to support the daughter who has shown more grace and strength than I ever managed." "Of course I want you there, Mom," I said, feeling tears in my own eyes now. "You're always welcome in my life. The question is whether you can handle Dad being angry with you for choosing my side." She was quiet for a moment, considering the implications of what she was committing to. "Your father has been angry with me about one thing or another for most of our marriage," she said finally. "At least this time it would be for something worthwhile." With 2 weeks left until the wedding, the battle lines had been clearly drawn. Uncle Frank had confirmed that he would walk me down the aisle in his dress blue uniform, a decision that had sent ripples of approval through the military families at our church. Grandpa Joe had scheduled a meeting with his lawyer to discuss revising his will and had made it clear to Dad that his choices were being noticed and would have consequences. Jake's family had essentially adopted me, with his sister Carol coordinating details with Sarah Chen, and his father Tony planning to give Jake the traditional father of the groom talk that my own father should have been giving. Even Jake's teenage nephews had asked if they could be honorary ushers, since there might be empty seats to fill. But Madison wasn't going down without a fight. If anything, the family conflict had energized her social media presence. She had started posting daily updates about her party planning, each one more elaborate and attention-grabbing than the last. She claimed to have booked a celebrity DJ, hired professional photographers, and arranged for several major influencers to attend and create content. The posts were designed to make her party look like the social event of the season, while subtly suggesting that anyone who didn't prioritize it was being unsupportive. She had even started using hashtags like Family First and Dreams Supported, which felt like direct shots at my decision not to reschedule. But I was starting to suspect that Madison's grand plans weren't as solid as her social media posts suggested. When I ran into Tyler at the grocery store, Jake's friend who worked in digital marketing, and knew Tyler professionally, he pulled me aside with some interesting information. "Mia, I probably shouldn't be telling you this, but Tyler's been scrambling to make good on promises Madison thinks he made. She's been telling people that he has connections with major influencers, but most of his clients are local businesses and small-scale content creators. He's trying to save face, but I don't think this party is going to be nearly as impressive as Madison thinks it will be." The thought that Madison's party might be a disappointment gave me no pleasure. I wasn't hoping for her to fail, I just wanted my wedding day to be about Jake and me, without family drama overshadowing everything. But I was curious about how the conflict was playing out in the broader community. My answer came during the following Sunday's church service. Pastor Williams made a point of mentioning the upcoming wedding and asking the congregation to keep Jake and me in their prayers during this special time. Several people approached us after the service to express their excitement and ask about details, but the most telling moment came when Mrs. Henderson, our longtime neighbor, cornered my parents after church. "Bob," she said in her direct way, "I hope you're planning something special for Mia's wedding. That girl has been such a credit to your family, and Jake seems like a wonderful young man." Dad's response was uncomfortable and vague, something about family obligations and complicated schedules. Mrs. Henderson's expression made it clear that she knew exactly what was happening and didn't approve. The social pressure was mounting, and I could see it wearing on Dad. He had started calling Mom more frequently, asking questions about wedding details, and wondering aloud if there might be a way to make both events work. But every time he brought it up, Mom reminded him that he had made his choice and would need to live with the consequences. Meanwhile, my wedding preparations were proceeding beautifully. Sarah Chen had outdone herself coordinating with Jake's family and Uncle Frank to create something even more special than what I had originally planned. The addition of military honors and the firefighter participation had turned our ceremony into something that felt bigger and more meaningful than I had ever imagined. Uncle Frank had been practicing with the processional timing and had even coordinated with Pastor Williams to incorporate a moment acknowledging service members and first responders. Jake's captain, Mike, had arranged for an honor guard of firefighters to form an arch with their axes as we exited the church, a tradition I had never heard of, but that brought tears to my eyes when he described it. The contrast between my authentic, love-filled preparations and Madison's increasingly frantic social media performance was becoming impossible to ignore. While she posted about party planners and celebrity guests, I was surrounded by people who genuinely cared about me and Jake building a life together. 3 days before the wedding, Dad made one last attempt to salvage the situation. He called me directly, bypassing Mom's growing resistance to his position. "Mia," he said, his voice heavy with something that might have been regret. "I've been thinking about everything that's happened, and I wonder if maybe there's still a way to work this out. What if I attended your ceremony and then went to Madison's party afterward? It would show support for both of my daughters." "Dad," I said, feeling remarkably calm despite the weight of the conversation. "Madison scheduled her party for my wedding day deliberately. She admitted that to me herself. This isn't about scheduling conflicts or family obligations. This is about choices and consequences." "But I'm your father," he said, his voice breaking slightly. "I should be walking you down the aisle." "You should be," I agreed. "But you chose not to. Uncle Frank is walking me down the aisle now, and I couldn't be more honored to have him do it." The silence stretched between us, filled with 30 years of missed opportunities and misplaced priorities. "Mia," he said finally, "I think I made a mistake." "Yes," I replied gently. "You did. But some mistakes can't be unmade, Dad. Some choices have permanent consequences. I hope Madison's party is everything she dreamed it would be. Because it cost her a sister, and it cost you the chance to walk your daughter down the aisle. I hung up feeling sad but resolved. In 3 days, I would marry the love of my life, surrounded by people who had chosen to celebrate with us. Madison would have her party, Dad would face the consequences of his choices, and I would finally be free from a family dynamic that had never served me well. 1 year after our wedding, Jake and I were sitting on the porch of our new house in Church Hill, watching the sunset paint the Richmond skyline in shades of gold and pink. It was March 14th, the eve of our first anniversary, and I was reflecting on how completely our lives had transformed since that dramatic family confrontation 12 months earlier. The house we had bought was a charming Victorian that needed some work, but it felt like home in a way that my childhood house never had. Jake had been promoted to lieutenant at the fire station, and I had been named department head at Lincoln High School. We were building something together based on mutual respect and shared dreams, exactly what I had always hoped marriage could be. Uncle Frank had become such an integral part of our lives that we had converted the small apartment above our garage into a space for him. At 69, he was still active and independent, but he loved being close to family, and Jake and I treasured having him nearby. He had officially become Dad Frank to both of us, and the title suited him perfectly. The changes in our extended family had been just as dramatic. Mom had found her voice in ways that amazed everyone who knew her. After 30 years of keeping the peace by staying silent, she had started standing up for herself and making decisions based on what she thought was right, rather than what would avoid conflict. She and Dad were in marriage counseling, though the outcome remained uncertain. Grandpa Joe had celebrated his 85th birthday, surrounded by the family members who had shown up when it mattered. His revised will had become official, and the succession plan for Thompson and Sons construction now reflected his values about hard work and family loyalty. Dad was still involved in the business, but his role had been reduced significantly. The most surprising development had been Madison's journey. After losing Tyler and watching her influencer career implode, she had entered intensive therapy and started working on the deep-seated issues that had driven her behavior for years. 6 months after our wedding, she had reached out again, and this time I had been ready to listen. Our first conversation in almost a year had been awkward and painful, but it had also been honest in a way that our relationship had never been before. Madison had taken full responsibility for deliberately scheduling her party on my wedding day, and she had acknowledged the pattern of selfishness and manipulation that had defined her behavior since childhood. "I'm not asking you to forgive me right away," she had said during that phone call. "I know I have years of behavior to make up for, but I want you to know that I'm working on becoming the sister you deserve to have all along." It had taken months of small steps and careful conversations, but Madison and I had slowly started rebuilding a relationship based on honesty rather than family obligation. She had gotten a job working for a nonprofit organization, using her social media skills to promote causes she actually cared about, rather than just trying to become famous. The person who had struggled most with the new family dynamics was Dad. The social and professional consequences of his choices had been more severe and longer-lasting than anyone had anticipated. His construction business had recovered somewhat, but his reputation in the community had been permanently damaged. More importantly, he had lost the respect of his own father and the trust of his wife and daughters. Dad had tried multiple times to apologize and rebuild our relationship, but I had learned that some bridges once burned couldn't be reconstructed. I was polite when we encountered each other at family gatherings, and I held no active anger toward him, but the special bond between father and daughter had been broken beyond repair. The irony wasn't lost on me that Dad's attempt to protect Madison from consequences had ultimately led to the most severe consequences she had ever faced, while his dismissal of my feelings had cost him the relationship with the daughter who had actually valued his approval. But tonight wasn't about dwelling on past hurts. Tonight was about celebrating the anniversary of the day Jake and I had committed to building something better together. Jake came out onto the porch carrying 2 glasses of wine and settled into the chair next to mine. "Tomorrow's the big day," he said, smiling at me in the way that still made my heart skip a beat. "Any regrets about how everything went down?" "Not a single one," I replied without hesitation. That day showed me who my real family is, and it's better than anything I could have imagined. Jake reached over and took my hand, the simple gold band on his finger, catching the last rays of sunlight. "I've been thinking about starting some new traditions for our family," he said. "What if we make March 15th not just about our wedding anniversary, but about celebrating everyone who chose to be part of our story?" I loved the idea immediately. A day to honor Uncle Frank's service and sacrifice Jake's family's unwavering support, Mom's courage in finally standing up for what was right, and all the friends and colleagues who had rallied around us when it mattered most. As if summoned by our conversation, Uncle Frank appeared at the back door. "Are you two planning to sit out here all evening, or are you going to come in for dinner?" he called out. "Carol sent over that casserole you like, and I'm not eating it by myself." Jake's sister Carol had moved to Richmond 6 months after our wedding, accepting a position at VCU Medical Center so she could be closer to family. She had become the sister I had always wanted, and her presence had completed the circle of chosen family that now surrounded us. Over dinner, Uncle Frank told stories about his Navy days, while Jake shared updates from the fire station. We talked about Mom's plans to go back to school for her master's degree, about Madison's progress in therapy, and about Grandpa Joe's latest project to document the history of Thompson & Sons construction for future generations. As the evening wound down and Uncle Frank retired to his apartment, Jake and I cleaned up the kitchen together in comfortable silence. This was what I had always dreamed marriage would look like: two people working as partners, supporting each other's dreams, and building something meaningful together. My phone buzzed with a text from Madison. "Tomorrow marks 1 year since I made the worst decision of my life," it read, "but it also marks 1 year since you showed me what real strength looks like. Thank you for not giving up on me completely. Happy anniversary, sister." I showed the message to Jake, who smiled and kissed my forehead. "You taught a lot of people about boundaries and self-respect this year," he said, "including me." As we got ready for bed, I thought about the woman I had been a year ago, someone who absorbed other people's selfishness and called it family loyalty, who bent herself into impossible shapes to keep the peace, who believed that love meant accepting poor treatment without complaint. That woman was gone, replaced by someone who understood that real love required respect, that family was about choosing each other every day, not just sharing DNA, and that sometimes the most loving thing you could do was refuse to enable destructive behavior. Tomorrow, Jake and I would celebrate our first anniversary, surrounded by the people who had truly shown up for us. We would honor the vows we had made to each other and the family we had chosen to build together. And we would do it all knowing that we had learned one of life's most important lessons: you teach people how to treat you, and it's never too late to demand better. The story of my sister laughing as Dad chose her party over walking me down the aisle had become the story of how I finally learned to value myself enough to build the life I deserved, and that I realized as I drifted off to sleep in my husband's arms was the best possible ending I could have written. Have you ever had to choose between keeping the peace and standing up for yourself? Have you struggled with family members who seemed to get away with behavior that hurt you? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. Your experience might help someone else who's facing a similar situation. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life stories about family relationships and finding the courage to demand the respect you deserve. And remember, sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself and others is to set boundaries and stick to them. Real families will respect those boundaries, and the people who don't probably weren't really family to begin with.